Hello again, and I'm coming to you from whispering from the rowan tree, also sitting by my window looking at a wonderful maple tree. And this is where stories are remembered, not just for what they were, but for what they quietly ask of us now. This story is about a man many people would have forgotten if he hadn't, for a time, carried everything. He was Mr. Partington, the first delivery man. Where I lived as a child wasn't quite the village. It was a council estate, set a little apart as though it had been added later, which it was. Without quite asking permission of the land, rows of houses, similar, practical, newer than the hedgerows and the fields that surrounded them. Probably not wanted, but built there anyway. And just beyond, the old world was still there. The village down the hill, not far, but the lord of the manor, the quaint cottages and splendid gardens, so different from the poor on top of the hill, where we had 2 shops and a garage. And on the front forecourt of that garage, a small glass-fronted box where an older gentleman would sit, come rain, snow, hail or sun, watching the road in a quiet, patient way, until a car pulled in. Then he would come out, not a good morning or afternoon, no rush, no urgency. He would walk over, take the nozzle and fill the petrol himself. No one leaned out of the windows, no one tapped their watches. That wasn't how things were done then. And if you didn't arrive at that garage during the day, between probably the hours of 7 till 7, and you ran out of petrol, you ran out of luck, because it was just it. Beside the garage, there was a lane. It began simply enough, and then it dipped and dipped again. A long lane. Maybe that was why it was called Long Lane. It led away as though it was taking you back to something older, quieter, more settled. Older homes, older people set in their ways, the coalmen, the women who grew veg and tended the old orchards, chicken and pig pens. And at the very top of that lane sometimes there would be vegetables laid out. Fruit ripe and delicious, maybe a fresh egg or some honey. Leave what you can. That's what the sign said. Help yourself, because we trust you. It was all just placed there. Whatever had grown well that week. Left by women who lived further down the lane for anyone passing. No one watched, no one hovered. You took what you needed, and that was that. And somewhere along that lane lived Mr. Partington. He lived with his mother. That too was just accepted then. There were men like that in those days. Men who stayed, men who never quite left home, and never explained why. I never knew his first name. No one ever said it. As children, we noticed him because you couldn't not notice him. His back was bent, his neck drawn forward, just as though it was sunk into his shoulders. And his head sat in such a way that when he looked at you, he turned slightly to the side, and one eye didn't quite follow the other. It drifted just enough to unsettle you if you were young. Children are quick to notice these things and quicker still to react. I don't remember saying anything myself, but I do remember hearing it. The whispers, the giggles that came too quickly, the names not spoken loudly, but not hidden either. And I think now, well, I know now, of course he heard them, because how could he not? Mr. Partington did something no one else could. He carried things, anything and everything. If you needed anything collected, it was Mr. Partington you called. Small parcels, something awkward, something heavy, something no one else had the means or the time to fetch. Mr. Partington and his lorry. Every time he arrived, we watched as he got out of that lorry. That I remember now very clearly. The sound would come first. Low engine, steady, familiar. You could hear it long before you saw it, coming up that lane. Slowly, never fast, never rushed. As though the hill itself had agreed to let him pass. Then the lorry would appear, plain, no writing on the side, no name, no advertisement, just a working vehicle, doing what it was meant to do. Blue, I think. No, I'm sure. Sort of a denim blue. The same colour as the work coverall he wore every day. The same as a doctor. The same coat doctors wore, the long ones to the knees, only blue, not white. Strange, isn't it, how these memories linger? He would park carefully, always carefully. There was no swinging in or sharp turns. He placed that lorry exactly where it needed to be, as though every moment and movement had already been thought through. And then there was always a pause. Not long, but noticeable. A moment where the engine settled and he remained inside. And then he began to move. Slowly, deliberately. He would turn, shift his weight, and make his way to the door. Getting down from that cab was not simple for him. You could see that. One leg first, feeling for the step, holding onto that large, huge steering wheel, then the other leg. His body didn't move easily, it just sort of waited till it could move. It wasn't just his back. There was something in his legs as well, a carefulness, a restriction, as though every step had to be negotiated. But he never rushed it, never looked flustered. He just had his way, and he followed it every single time. And once he was down, that was it. The work began. He would walk slowly to the back, open the doors, lower the flap, and climb in. And whatever was inside, he would manage on his own. I remember once something large, a refrigerator, I think. It seemed far too big, too heavy. There were people watching, of course. Not helping, just watching. And he didn't ask. He positioned himself, adjusted, shifted, and slowly, with a method that must have taken years to learn, he brought it down, step by step. No fuss, no complaint, no drama, just done. And I think now that must have taken much more than strength. It must have taken courage. Not just to lift, but to be seen. To walk into a place where you knew you were not quite like everybody else. Where children stared, where adults looked past you or through you, or sometimes not at all. And to do it anyway, day after day. If you needed something collected, you got Mr. Partington. If you needed something delivered, you got Mr. Partington. Money didn't seem to matter much. Maybe it did, but not in the way that we think now. Enough to keep going. He knew how to do everything. Fix his lorry. Lift what seemed unliftable. Find places others couldn't reach. Travelled farther than we ever saw. He was everywhere and yet not really seen. Because most people didn't have cars. Not then. Not properly. We had buses. Twice a week on market days. A better service on market days. Sometimes on market days starting early and finishing around 9 at night. If you missed that last bus, that was it. I did once. I had to sit and hide behind the old red telephone box. It was dark. I was scared, waiting until my dad came on his bike to see where I was. Life didn't move quickly, and it didn't move easily except when Mr. Partington was involved. I can't remember how he was contacted. It must have been by one of the few telephones that had just come into service, rotary dial. Extinct now. Maybe messages just passed quietly or in the shop, pub or garage. But he came. Always. He didn't say much. Hardly anything at all, really. He would arrive, do what was needed and go. And somehow, yes, he did know how to do everything. And he always found a way when there didn't seem to be one. He drove that lorry up and down hills, into the next village, to Thatcham, and beyond that to Newbury, where the bigger shops were, where the things we needed existed. And then he would bring them back, up the hill, back to us. He was everywhere and yet not really seen. Years passed. We grew up, moved away, came back again. Cars appeared, not one or two, but everywhere. People began fetching things for themselves. Houses changed. The council homes were bought, altered, made into something different, much posher. The bungalows where the old people lived changed too. And slowly, without anyone marking the moment, Mr. Partington stopped coming. No one remembers the day he was no longer there. No one said that was his last delivery. No one gathered. No one asked. Because he was no longer needed. He simply just faded away. And I think now it wasn't only age. It was that the world no longer needed him. That is a strange thing to sit with. Because once we had a place for people like him. Not always out of kindness. Certainly not always out of understanding. But because we needed what they could do. And when that need faded, so did the place. Now, everything is delivered. Faster than ever. Quicker than thought. Left on doorsteps, without a face, without a name. And we do not see people like Mr. Partington anymore. And I sometimes wonder where they are. Not as a question to be answered, but as something to feel, because they were here. They lived, they worked, and they carried things for us in more ways than one. And perhaps they carried more than we ever understood. We see Amazon now, fast, unnoticed. Do we ever think, how did we manage before all this? Who fetched and carried for us when we couldn't? Mr. Partington did. He carried time, effort, and he carried a way of life for a small, quiet village that had no other way. And you might now think of things you've carried quietly, without being asked and without being seen. And know this: it mattered. It always did. So, thank you for listening to Whispering from the Royal Tree, and where the quiet lives are not forgotten.